All right, welcome to the Habitat demos for Friday, April 14th. These are going to be short today, but we've got some new scaffolding to show for building Python apps. Ryan did the work, and he's going to show it to you today. Ready, Ryan?
Yeah, all right. So I've got a couple things that I want to show you here. We've fixed up the Python scaffolding to be a little better in terms of dealing with pip and also just general dealing with applications. So a couple quick examples here of some different things we've got. So like one of them is the AWS CLI was a Python. Was a plan we had existing in there. And just to give you a sense of what we had before, wait.
Doesn't look like you're presenting just yet.
Oh, thank you. Let me fix that. So can you see my screen now? There we go. Cool.
Good, yeah.
Why did I do that? Get. So if you can see, this is basically the plan that we had before. There's a couple things you'll see in here that a lot of things we've taken out. Essentially all the stuff that we had before that was, just saving callbacks and then setting up environments and doing all the stuff in there has been replaced by these two lines. And that's literally it. So this is the new version of this plan. And, of course, you run build, and what it does under the covers is it actually does set up the Python virtual environment, and then does a pip install and sets up the shebangs for the stuff via the Python virtual environment, so that everything kind of works as intended. So that's one example there. And when that's done, so then, of course, we can do, hab package exec core AWS CLI AWS help, right? And it's working, so that's good. And then, of course, then we've got other types of plans that are a little bit different. And these are just applications. So I'll show some other things in a minute. But so this is Python Pillow. Pillow is just an imaging library. I chose this because it has some C extensions in it as well. Actually, so if we look at this, so we have some external dependencies that are build dependencies that we need to pull in for this. And it's building a Python application that uses these core libraries. And it's kind of important to call that out because there's going to be cases where you do need stuff like that, and this is one of the things that was fixed in this is that the dependencies for runtime are now resolving correctly in the scaffolding, and there's some changes that we made in plan build that support this, and that's mostly done by Fletcher. So thank you, Fletcher. And run build on this now. This one is going to kind of work in the more traditional fashion of downloading the archive. And this will download this and then run against setup.py and actually do the install through that. One of the things you'll notice as it happens, though, we added some little bit of sugar into this, in that setup.py is detected. It will do package description automatically. It'll pull the description out, and it'll default to trying to use long description. And if long description is undefined, then it'll use description. And it'll automatically add that to your package for you. So that's pretty cool. Same for upstream URL. If upstream URL is defined in the setup.py, I'll pull that out and define it in the hab package as well. So that's all working nicely. And if you want to see hab path, best. So you can see the actual descriptions embedded in there for us. And the upstream is, here it is actually set correctly. So that's working nicely. And then of course, you know, you can actually run some of the programs. This is in it, so and it's running. And then of course, then we have one other type, and this is the more common case that we're going to see. And this one, I will say, is a little bit of a work in progress. We found one of the community members was doing some testing on this, so I want to make a big thank you to I think it was Ben Dang. He was testing some of the stuff out with some of his projects last night, and he did find a bug and with it. But let me show you what we have here. So this is the Django sample app, and this is what you'll see with this is, you know, we've got our habitat directory inside of it with the plan in it. And this is what you'll normally end up using in most cases. This is, at the moment, this is literally all that is required for the plan to work. Asterisk work. The bug that we have is that there is some dependencies that are not getting pulled in. So for example, requirements text, well, sometimes it's requirements text, sometimes it's not. This Django is not actually getting installed. So there's some things we'll have to figure out on how to do this, because there's not a hard set, like you have to have a certain file name convention for, like you do with, say, Ruby or some of the other languages for this file. So we'll have to figure this out, but it's usually requirements.something, but there can be variations of that file. So we can still build it though, and it does actually install the thing into the correct site packages path and all that stuff. Just that we got to figure out the dependencies portion of it still. So, but you can see that there's everything is basically in here. So your sample app is in here and so forth. So that's kind of that on how that works. There's one other thing I wanted to point out. This was using Python 3.6, but if we look at that core this one is actually using Python 2. The scaffolding for that is working quite nicely as well, and it actually is working on both versions of Python right now. The Python 2 one uses virtualenv under the hood. So both cases, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to remove that with some support for environment variables, but those aren't quite ready for prime time. So that's kind of it for the Python scaffolding for the moment.
That's perfect, Ben. The size of that Django app, the plan, seeing it at 3 or 4 lines compared to what it would have been before, is exactly the moment that we're trying to create for people. We are absolutely trying to make sure that Habitat is a first-class dev tool, where we focus on your app. And one of the changes that we've recently made, Fletcher made this change, and it's he's not here today, so I'll just chat about it, is the removal of the requirement of package underscore source. So prior, that was a required field because we were building a packaging manager that was rebuilding basically Linux from scratch. We were building other people's software into Habitat packages. We're past that step now, and we're refocusing on how to make it easier for developers to get involved. So one of the changes that we've recently made is removing package underscore source as a requirement, and instead, by default, looking at the code around where the plan lives to figure out what should be done. So that's why that Django app didn't need package underscore source. Instead, by default now, we assume that your plan lives with your source code. It is no longer the default to need to go out and pull from a URL or specify no URL and then use like the Git archive trick that people were using to pull an archive out of Git or a tarball out of a Git commit. We're hoping that's a good improvement for you all too. If you want to see the details, it's in issue 2074, and I'll just show it real fast.
Yeah.
So here you can see his minor changes. His commit is a hell of a lot shorter than the rationale. But in here, you can see there's some new variables that are filled in. We remove the need now for you to have the do, download, do verify, and do unpack steps. So that will reduce the size of what we used to see a plan looking like when you were building your own source code with this package source, no such file, and then these three callbacks overwritten. And this was in almost every single plan for a developer. And now this is what it looks like if you're using no scaffolding. And if you are using any scaffolding, then these callbacks don't need to be overwritten normally either. Like I said, our plan here is to do our best to make the on-ramp as easy as possible for developers making packages for their applications.
Yeah.
Ryan, I think you got one more thing, right?
Yeah, I do. And one more thing, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of a good segue too, and tails off of a little bit of what you were talking about with those repetitive overrides, right? So last night I was finding myself doing some of those repetitive overrides, and actually I didn't read all that PR and realize that those were in there. But this is still a good feature in my opinion. The only place I'm using it so far is in the scaffolding for Python, but effectively, oops, type here. I added a new first class. Stable callback function. So essentially, this allows you to for any function that prefixed with do underscore, rather than making those individual shell blocks, you can pass in multiple strings of the name of those functions and tell it to disable it, and essentially does the same thing as writing it out by hand, but it makes it a little bit easier because you can kind of scope where it belongs. Like for in these cases, you can see that if in some conditions I want to disable clean, so that, like for example, if you have local source copies that you're building out of, you don't delete your source code because that would be bad. So, and then and the other condition would be disabling these, which I may need to get rid of because we don't necessarily need that anymore.
You're not presenting again.
Oh, damn it. I am not good at this. Let me just do that one more time. So, here it is. Ta-da! Thank you for...
Perfect.
So yeah, this is the disable callbacks function and how you use it. Pretty straightforward. If you pass in something that's not a do prefix thing, it will bomb out on you and say that couldn't do wasn't able to do it or disable it. And it also will make sure that it's actually a function. So like if you accidentally put something in there that's a variable or whatever, it won't squash that. But that's basically it on on that.
Perfect. All right. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have any comments or questions, join us in the Habitat chat channel. Any of the features we talked about today or anything that's coming up on our roadmap, we'd love to chat with you about it. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you for joining, guys. We'll see you.